But guys, this subject today, a biblical understanding of evangelism, and the idea of this being a mark of a healthy church really follows very closely on the heels of Marks 3 and 4. If you remember, Marks 3 and 4 were what?
Conversion.
Right understanding of the gospel and a right understanding of conversion. And it stands to reason, if we have a right understanding of what the gospel is, and we have a right understanding, a biblical understanding of how people are converted, then that is going to have a direct impact on how we evangelize. Now, this is a heavy subject in our culture today, because there are about as many opinions on how to evangelize as there are noses on people's faces. I'm serious. There are more evangelism programs on the market out there today for the church than you can shake a stick at. And the fundamental problem with the vast majority of them is they are unbiblical. They have an unbiblical view of the gospel, they have an unbiblical view of conversion, and they have an unbiblical view about how to evangelize. So this is a very, very important subject, especially when we understand that the Great Commission that Christ gave to the church is evangelical at its very core. Did He not say, "Go make disciples of the nations, and baptize them, teaching them to observe whatsoever things I have commanded you"? I mean, that's at the very heart of the responsibility of the church. So let's look into this. And I thought Dever's introduction to this section was just excellent. So I'll just read it verbatim here. He said, ever since the inception of the Billy Graham Crusades in the 1950s and the rise of the ecumenical movement and the proliferation of parachurch groups, evangelism has come to mean different things to different people. To some, evangelism means inviting people to a church service or a crusade where they are urged to walk an aisle or pray a prayer. Indeed, many can scarcely imagine genuine conversions happening otherwise. Guys, that's saying a lot, and I think he's very accurate with that statement. Many professing believers cannot imagine how a person can be converted without being invited to a church service and walking an aisle. But the question is that biblically how we are to evangelize? He goes on to say, to others, evangelism is much less a monologue and invitation than it is a dialogue and conversation. The thought of a speaker, i.e. the pastor, imposing his own seemingly speculative views on a hopelessly captive audience, that would be you, is too much for some broad spirits to bear. For others, his humor is very subtle. You have to pay close attention. For others, evangelism has become equated with initiating conversations with strangers, sharing gospel tracts, praying a prayer, and sometimes even downplaying the importance of theological development. Waiting for unbelievers to observe something different in Christians is perceived in some quarters these days as naive and lazy. You catch what he's saying there? What did Jesus say? By this shall all men know that you are my disciples if you love one another. A lot of people don't think that's evangelism. A lot of people are not willing to just let the salt and the light that should naturally flow out of the church's life have its effect and draw unbelievers to Jesus Christ.
I think that a lot of that's because the church is not being that salt and light.
Well, that's it in a large number of the cases, no question about it. But even where it is, there are those that would view that as a naive way to think that evangelism could actually happen that way. It's really almost a foreign concept. in a lot of evangelical circles today. He said, still others leave evangelism to the pros, that is, the pastors and the seminary professors and the youth leaders and the like. After all, if evangelism is so important, who am I to try it? So what do you think? Are each of these methods as good as the others? Are they equally innocuous, or might there be dangers lurking under the surface of any or all? And what exactly are we doing when we evangelize anyway? In other words, what are the essential components without which we have not evangelized? How do we define evangelistic success? Do we define it as prayers prayed? Do we define it as commitments made or aisles walked? How do we define evangelism? And once we have answers to these questions, how do we actually go about evangelism, and what should be our motives? Let's add some zeal to our knowledge, or some knowledge to our zeal, rather, he says. First of all, he begins by stating what evangelism is not. Evangelism is not us imposing our religious views on other people. A lot of people today equate evangelism with imposing our views on other people as a ploy to gain power or control over them. I actually had an individual that I was sharing the gospel with here just a few months ago that accused me of that very thing. You're just trying to impose what you believe on me so you can control me. And that's what religion does. But guys, Christianity, above all the other religions of the world, can't possibly do that if you understand our theology of conversion. You see, in our theology of conversion, we believe that humanity is so entrenched in sin that unless God converts them, they're not going to be converted. And it matters not how strongly one may try to impose our religious views on another, unless the Spirit of God does a work of creation in that depraved heart, they remain unconverted. Therefore, Dever says, Christianity is actually unique among the world religions for the impossibility of imposing its belief structure on others. Only God convinces people to repent and believe. There's a very interesting passage in the book of Acts, chapter 16. The Apostle Paul has gone into the city of Thyatira. And they've gone down, or no, wait a minute, it's Philippi, wasn't it? Philippi, yeah. And they've gone down, there's a place down there by the river where the women go to do their washing. And Paul goes down and he joins them and he begins to share the gospel. And I want you to look at what the passage says. And one who heard us, Luke reports, was a woman named Lydia from the city of Thyatira. They're in Philippi. She's from the city of Thyatira. A seller of purple goods who was a worshiper of God. And the Lord opened her heart to pay attention to what was said by Paul. And what was the consequence of God opening her heart? She was baptized and her household as well. You see, Paul comes preaching the gospel. Here you have a woman, a devout woman, who is trying to worship God, but she's unconverted. She hears Paul expounding the gospel of Jesus Christ, and you think, oh, well, she's already searching for God, and Paul is preaching the gospel. You know, all she's got to do is appropriate that gospel for herself. Right? Not so. It says God opened her heart. Don't miss that. So evangelism is not us imposing our religious beliefs on others, because we don't believe that you can convert someone that way. It takes the active work of God changing and working in that heart to actually convert the individual. So your first bullet point is this: